Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
Hey everybody, happy Friday. Really happy to be on the show today. I've got another wonderful guest who I'll introduce here in just a moment, Bryce Henson. Before we do that, this episode, as they all are, it's brought to you by Moxie Pest Control. We're doing some really exciting things, not just nationally, but here in Phoenix, where I'm from. Our location is really thriving, and we're very fortunate and very grateful for that. One of the key ways that we've been doing that is the same way that all of you have been scaling your businesses. We do the SEO, we do the PPC, we do the mailers, we do the referrals, we do all that kind of stuff. But we've really hit a little bit of a niche, especially in Phoenix, in acquisitions. And so the last 3 or 4 years, we've gained a competency in buying pest control companies and other home service companies. And so if you are one of those people listening, or if you know somebody, pass them my cell. They can email me directly, but they can call or text me anytime they'd like. It's 480-254-9730. I'm very accessible, and we'd love to be able to talk to anybody that wants to about that. Bryce Henson is on with us today. He's the CEO of Fit Body Boot Camp, and we just kind of got to know each other a little bit the last 5-10 minutes or so. And I'm really excited to be able to have him on. I think that he's got a little bit of a different approach and a unique approach, not just to fitness and feeling good and the real pandemic, which is not the actual pandemic, COVID, that's going on, but obesity and our health. And I think that he's also got some really interesting points and topics as it relates to approaching business and mindset. And so, Bryce, thank you so much for being on and carving out a half hour, 45 minutes of your day to be with us. How are you doing today?
Austin, thanks so much for having me. Happy Friday. Yeah, it's great to be alive, and certainly very grateful to be on your show and serve the audience today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's get a little bit of a background. What's the Reader's Digest version of some of your career? How did it start? And then, you're the CEO of a large company now that's doing really well, that's thriving. It's not all roses. And so what's a little bit of your path? How has that come to fruition?
Yeah, great question. Well, I'm going to start actually way back and start with a little drama point. And I think there's a big takeaway and learning lesson. And then we can kind of guide through how I got my later years towards my career. But I typically say I'm from the Midwest. I've lived in Southern California now for about 17 years. But originally, my first 10 years were in Atlanta, Georgia. And I used to talk like this when I was a little guy. And, straight to the point, for first world standards, I had a very challenging and tumultuous upbringing. And what I mean by that, my father was a drug addict. He was addicted to alcohol and gambling. The trifecta, not necessarily conducive for a family upbringing. And, certainly very challenging. And, due to his gambling problem and then drug addiction, alcohol addiction, eventually it hit to a point where my mom, bless her heart and bless her soul, had to escape with her 3 kids, fearing for her life after a very traumatic situation. And our world got rocked upside down literally overnight. And we went from perceivingly having a lot. It wasn't that my parents were overly successful or my father was overly successful, but his father was, so had an inheritance. But that changed in the blink of an eye. And by the grace of God, my grandma, who lived in the state of Michigan, was able to take us in. And we lived with her in a tiny little humble 3-bedroom house where my grandma had a room. My brother and I shared a room. And then my mother and my sister not only shared a room, but shared a bed for 10 years while we were just trying to get on our feet, working hard. My mom was to make ends meet. And, when I look at that situation and seeing the challenge, seeing us run out of money before we ran out of month, and just the stress and anxiety it caused, on one hand, you can look at that as a downfall, but I really think it was a blessing disguised as a tragedy because it taught me some life lessons about, working hard and dedication and responsibility for my mother, lack of responsibility for my father. But most importantly, Austin, I would say it taught me, and it's a very cold message up front, but actually it served me well, that no one is coming to save you. There's no one coming on a white horse that's going to come pick you up and save you. You have to save yourself. You have to put one foot in front of the other, lean into the hardship and really, take the attitude, if it has to be, it's up to me. And I learned that at a very young age, as I went through, my later childhood and into college, And that got me to my adult years when I went to Michigan State. I graduated and I moved to Southern California. So I'll stop there, and certainly I'm happy to kind of curtail and how I got in the fitness industry. But that was the start of my life, and really a couple of big learning lessons that I think will be really valuable to your audience.
No, thank you so much for being vulnerable. And, I, a couple of years ago was talking to a mentor, and, I think the pipe dream out there is comfort and having the house that you want, or the family, or the cars, and, I don't know if you have kids or not. I've got 4, and, some of them are great, just like mom and dad pleasers. And some of them, man, they make you pull your hair out. And he's, he just said, look, Austin, like no kid that ever followed the rules, like changed the world. You know what I mean? So like those little troublemakers of yours, like those are the ones that are going to be like really shaking things up. And it kind of gave me a little bit of a different perspective there. But, it reminded me of and I'm not, I need to say this publicly, I'm not a humongous LeBron James fan. But
nor am I.
Yeah, it's a very polarizing wiki, very controversial, but he has his quote about Ohio. Nothing is given in Ohio. Everything is earned. And I really like that quote. Like, there's no white horses, you said, Bryce, that someone's going to ride in on and save you from a terrible situation that you were in for a while. And just like LeBron James, no one gave him anything. He is extremely gifted and talented, but that guy has worked his butt off to be able to perform at the level that he anyway. So although I'm not a fan, like he has put himself in the situation that he's in, right? Nobody else did that. No one else did sit-ups for him. No one else shot those free throws for him. He did that. You are running a very large business. You are running an 8-figure business. What are some of the attributes that are needed from your perspective to be able to do something like that? I mean, our listenership, it's mostly CEOs and, key people in organizations that are anywhere from the $2 to $250 million range as it relates to either home services or different sorts of business models. And you are doing it. How are you doing that? And what does it take to be able to do that day in, day out?
Great question. Thank you for that. By the way, I wrote down that quote from LeBron, and I'm with you. I'm not a huge LeBron fan, but I do think there's value and you can pull nuggets from anyone. And I think that was a really good takeaway. So for me, I mean, how it kind of worked out, Fit Body Bootcamp is an international franchise. We have hundreds of locations based in North America, mainly in the US, but some in Canada as well, about 10% of our ownership. And, because of our reach, we're able to make a big impact. And it hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows. And certainly if your audience is listening to this, or executives or CEOs, the struggle is real. And, there's a lot more hard days and challenging days than there is, positive days. And that's just sometimes the nature of the beast. But you have to have a good attitude and, think positive and, put one foot in front of the other. And typically things have worked out for me. And I know that will be for the same for your audience. But I would say, it's a loaded question, how to be able to run it off. For me, I've really focused, and I think, naturally I have some leadership skills that I've continued to develop, and I've made a lot of mistakes, a lot of false starts, throughout my career. In the last 10 years, I've really developed myself as a fitness professional, and then a franchise expert, and a vice president, and now a CEO. But for me, while there's a lot of skill sets that are needed, leadership is really the skill set that I've honed in on the most, and what I see the most value in really getting all of our people aligned towards a mission, and really using our people, our mission, our vision, values, and really creating leverage and velocity around getting everyone rowing in the same direction. So leadership for me is it's always the problem and it's always the solution. And it's a skill that I've had to continue to develop, and I certainly will. And I came a long way just in the last decade of being on that pursuit. But I certainly have a long way to go. And I think, a big takeaway for you and your audience is, having confidence in yourself and the skills that you continue to develop, but also having that white belt mentality, like, letting go of your ego, because no one likes to follow someone who has a massive ego, and really being a student of whatever craft that you're going. And you can always learn something. And I think, that mindset and that philosophy of things has served me well to date, really helped me in that pursuit.
So Bryce, you said the last decade you've really evolved and really learned a lot. Could you maybe point out one or two like really key turning points for you as it relates to business or some of your mindset or philosophy the last decade?
Ooh, that is an incredible question. I'm going to give you a really loaded answer, but it's going to be real. It's going to be raw and authentic, because for me, it actually changed the trajectory of my life. And I'm a recovering alcoholic. Interestingly enough, I never thought in a million years that I'd follow in the same footstep with my father, who was an alcoholic. I know there's some genetic wiring that I just unfortunately didn't really get the cue on at a young age, even though we escaped and we left. I think because I was away from my father, I didn't really see the ins and outs of it as I, developed and matured. But in any case, running a business, and I was a very highly functioning alcoholic. So whenever I thought of someone who drinks alcohol excessively or has an alcohol problem, I think of someone who's a bum, who doesn't have a job, who's, living under an overpass, who has, drinking alcohol daily out of a brown bag. And that was never me. It was actually quite the opposite. I was more of a binge drinker. So, I would get my stuff dialed in through the week, and then I would drink, the weekends. And unfortunately, one drink led to two to three. And then before you know it, I just never had the ability to stop. And for the most part, it was very highly functioning, but there were some cracks that were able to show for sure. But as it turns out, my sister, who I love dearly, she has the same, genetic makeup as me and went through the same experience. So we had a working relationship for a few years. And my sister, she's an incredible soul, like this energetic, enthusiastic, vibrant person, being in the fitness industry and specifically owning a fitness company that she helped me run. She would attract all clients, and she just had so many things going for her, and still does. But unfortunately, alcohol also played a part in her story as well. And, Austin, I remember after multiple issues, multiple things, not necessarily from a work perspective, from a personal perspective regarding alcohol, but that eventually bled into a working relationship. And, there was a series of probably a dozen things. And, I was trying to do the right thing. I was trying to be a good person, but I was actually being an ineffective leader. And one situation happened. We had a 6-week challenge party, and we were celebrating our clients. And unfortunately, alcohol was involved, and things didn't go well. And for the sake of time, I'll leave it at that. But the following day, I had a chat with my sister, and it was probably the 6th or 7th time I had this conversation. And I finally was kind of at a loss. I'm like, my dear sister, I love you. I don't know what else to do. You're incredibly awesome in all these particular categories in life, but there's just this one thing that's holding you back. And if it's not resolved, I can see it being a very big detriment, forward facing. And after that conversation, I ended up going home, and I took, I was very heavy, as you would imagine, and I went to sleep, and I woke up. And when I woke up, I went to the bathroom, and I looked at the mirror. And Austin, I had a deep, dark, really, really thoughtful, provoking look at the mirror. And what I realized is that, society will forgive criminals, but not hypocrites. And at the end of the day, while nothing to maybe that gravity or the outward consequences weren't as severe as some of the stuff that we were working through, on her side of the coin, that's not to say that it couldn't happen with me. And luck just kind of hit, my favor there. But I looked in the mirror and I thought to myself, how can I expect, my dear sister, a family member, someone who's leading one of the divisions of my company, how can I expect something of them, but not the same of myself? And that was really probably the line in the sand that has defined my leadership. And, unfortunately, the situation got worse before it got better, and, had to go through some dark days. But I'm happy to report that was in the December of 2016. So, going on 6 years now. And that was the last time that I drank alcohol. And, Austin, I would say from a leadership perspective, from a business perspective, you asked for one or two significant shifts that changed everything for me. Number one, the removal of alcohol in my life has had just tremendous effects. I wouldn't be talking with you if it was still in my life, even from a small frequency, but a binge drinking capacity. And then two, I learned the importance of leadership, and I learned the importance of moral authority. I learned the importance of walking your talk. And for me, that was a really big defining moment. It's very humble and very vulnerable, but it's the truth. And it's something that I want to share with you and your audience, because if you can take something, because maybe it's not alcohol for, any of you listening, maybe it's not drugs, but maybe it's overeating. Maybe it's, being obsessive compulsive, whatever it is for you. There's something that's holding you back. And for me, it was alcohol. And my call to action for you, as I kind of put a bow on this, is to face yourself in the mirror, face your demon, attack that and overcome that. And when you do, even though it's going to be very, very challenging to go through, your world will open, and it's done that for me. And I want that for you.
Well, and I so appreciate you, Bryce, being so open and so vulnerable about that. Congratulations, by the way,
Thank you.
and well done for kicking that. But you have like the Instagram life, and then you have real life, and every single person that's listening, just like you said, it may not be alcohol, but it is fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank.
One of 1,000 things. There is something that's holding us back. There's something that we can start doing to improve our lives. There's something that we can stop doing to improve our lives, right? And so thank you for sharing that. I think that's extremely valuable and extremely meaningful. I want to talk for a moment a little bit about the real pandemic. And I thought that you so eloquently said before the show went live, just that, hey, all the respect in the world to COVID. It's a real thing. It's really affecting people. People are actually passing away because of it. It is a pandemic, but there's a much, much, much larger pandemic, and there's many of them. But you talked about the pandemic of obesity. Could you speak to that for a few moments?
Totally. And, what I said offline, you just articulated very clearly, and respect, and it's a real thing, and it's a very sad thing. So no disrespect there. And certainly it's affected lives in a negative way. And I'm biased. I come from the fitness industry. Fitness absolutely changed my life. And it has for many others. And that's why I'm so passionate to wave the Fit Body flag, to spread the mission of inspiring fitness and changing lives, which is what my organization does. But really, if you look at the data, obesity by far is the biggest statistical pandemic. And in fact, the CDC has not reported on the percentage of the population from the US before or after COVID started. It was nearly 45%, but it's been increasing at a rate of about 3% for the past 20 years. So we're right about 50%. I know when the CDC puts this new report out, scary to say half our population will be statistically obese. And I'm not even concerned about the vanity element. That's one thing, because you want to be able to look good and feel good. I mean, there's value in that. I'm talking about the health benefits. When you're obese, your body works harder. Your heart has to work harder. Your organs have to work harder. And according to the World Health Organization, nearly 3 million people die per year. That's statistically way more than COVID. And it's frustrating to me because the news is all about the fear porn. I mean, they're putting out there, they're scaring you, this, that, and the other. But really, in my humble opinion and professional opinion, the conversation needs to change about, instead of scaring people, we need to talk about, like, what are healthy lifestyle? What is, a lean life look like? What is, proper exercise, proper sunlight do? And, that has dramatic effects on people in a very, very positive way. And it's sad to report, specifically, we talked about COVID offline and now here as well. The most people that are the most susceptible are the ones with compromised immune systems. But most importantly, the people that are passing away with the highest frequency and receiving the biggest negative impact of COVID are the people who are obese. So it's a conversation that I strongly think needs to change. We need to start promoting health, wellness, fitness, working out, getting sunlight, drinking water. And then the benefit, not only does it help the obesity pandemic, when another pandemic comes, because history just repeats, 100 years ago, we had the Spanish flu, and there'll be another pandemic in the future. That's just, the history is riddled with that. Number one, our population will be more equipped to handle it. And number two, we'll be just much healthier, and a lot of the health complications and the cost to our healthcare system will have been reduced. So that's my big mission, my big value that I want to showcase to the world. And I appreciate you kind of giving the platform to speak on it.
So why, Bryce, aren't we talking more about it? I mean, getting out and exercising and eating good foods and having some sunshine like every day in your life, are those just not things that are sexy to talk about from a news perspective? Is the fear a much greater motivator than eat your vegetables, eat your fruits, exercise kind of thing? Why aren't we talking about it more?
Totally. I mean, high level, what you just said is absolutely right. It's not as sexy to talk about because on one hand, it's actually pushing out personal responsibility and accountability. It's much easier to say, and I got the vaccine, so I have no issue with the vaccine, but it's much easier to say, take this vaccine, that's going to be the cure all end all, or, you're going to die X, Y, and Z, versus, what, Austin, or fill in the blank, it's your fault, but it's also your responsibility. It's an opportunity to get better. So you need to change your eating habits. You need to change your, approach on life. And that's a much harder message to deliver. That's high level. But if you want to go really deep, and actually there's a scientific wiring. We have two parts of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is your evolved human brain. but you have the amygdala, which is your reptile brain. Amygdala is Greek for, I believe, walnut is the size of a walnut. And that's basically where it's your fight or flight. Your amygdala is constantly scanning for danger. So when you understand human psychology and the way the mind works, being that your mind is always searching for danger, specifically your amygdala, okay, what happens is, from a news perspective, the news's job, and people miss the point on this at all, the only purpose of the news is actually to sell advertising dollars. So their whole job is actually to sell advertising dollars. So it's much easier to get people's attention because, let's face it, we live in a very fast-paced world. We got internet, we got podcasts, we have Instagram, we have the highlight reels, we have everything going on. It's way easier to get someone's attention by scaring them because your amygdala fires. And that's actually, in my humble but also professional opinion, why it's an easier play to put out the fear and the scare than it is actually to produce positive education-based pieces. And it's sad to say, but that's just unfortunately the truth.
I think you're right. I have no argument to that. So it really is unfortunate, though. What we're talking about, the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. Let's talk about mindset. You have subscribed for I think a long time now to some of the Stoic mindset. Hopefully, you're a Ryan Holiday fan. I was just earlier today. He sent out a newsletter the other day, and some of his books that he recommends for the year. I love. I was able to listen to him speak a couple of years ago at a Scaling Up conference that Vern Harnish puts on. And I was just so impressed. His short books, The Obstacle is the Way and Ego is the Enemy. I mean, holy smokes. I think that he had 365 days of meditation or kind of a daily Stoic type thought for the day. But I'm glad to see you shaking your head up and down. It sounds like you are a Ryan Holiday fan. But speak to that for a little bit, because certainly through your childhood, you beating alcoholism, and then running a very large, very successful business in multiple markets, there has to be some mindset behind that.
Totally. And that's the foundation of it all, right? Because with a healthy, clean mind, you're able to execute and do well and add value and serve the world. And the opposite is also true. So yes, you are a kindred spirit, my friend, big fan of Ryan Holiday and The Obstacle is the Way and Ego's the Enemy and a lot of the work that he's done. I'm so grateful to subscribe and really feel blessed to have come across Stoic philosophy. I think for whatever reason, why it really stuck with me is inherently, I just always felt that way when, in the tragedy or the blessing that was disguised as a tragedy, which I alluded to with my childhood, I just always looked internally and said, okay, well, hey, this is the hands that I was dealt with, but let's stop crying about it and let's start doing something about it. And I think foundationally, from a mindset perspective, that's really what Stoicism is. And I like to say that Stoicism is the philosophy for the successful. It can sound cold, it can sound harsh at first, but actually, if you apply its principles, you will be successful. Your life will get better. You'll be more productive. You have a stronger mindset. You'll be a better leader, better father, better human. And probably my favorite Stoic quote is actually from Marcus Aurelius, and I actually was turned on to this by Ryan Holiday. And he said, was translated from Latin, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. And there's a lot of different takeaways, but he uses the analogy of a fire. So when you're starting a fire and all of a sudden if brush, if debris, if all these things are added to the fire, they're obstacles, they're challenges. The fire doesn't cry and say, oh, poor me, these obstacles, these challenges. The fire actually says, you know what? I'm going to take these challenges. I'm going to take this debris. I'm actually going to get bigger. I'm going to get stronger because of the challenges that have been presented. So for me, that's a really great analogy and a really great sounding board. And certainly it's always a work in progress. It's you're never there. And that's the beauty of Stoicism. But without shadow of a doubt, there's no way I would be in a position to lead not only an incredible 8-figure organization with hundreds of franchisees, hundreds of locations, incredible team, but also I wouldn't be able to lead myself without that, sounding principle.
No, thank you so much, Bryce. And I want to give you the last word as we round this out. There's a lot of people that will listen to this soon, and then just as it's out there forever on the online and on the internet. What are some words of advice or just parting thoughts that you might leave with us as we kind of had this discussion for the last half hour or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think incredible question, and Austin, this has been great, man. We're kindred spirits. I really support what you're doing. I've had a great time, and hopefully, I've added some value here. For me, one thing that served me well, and again, going back to Stoicism, is always looking for the opportunity to get better within the challenge. And when I look back at my life, like when I went through the horrible situation was in my youth, when I went through it, it was really tough. But I look back now, and I'm like, that was the biggest blessing ever. Like I'm the man I am because of that. Fast forward, with the alcoholism that was induced, and the fact that I had to part ways with my sister and that really horrible experience. It was like the worst experience of my life going through it, but I gained so much value. I gained so much strength and accountability and moral authority. So when I look at these lessons in life or these experiences in life, I find that the most challenging situations typically have been channeled to actually the good, and they're typically the biggest blessing. So, along the line of Stoicism, which falls perfectly in line, my parting piece of wisdom to your audience is stuff's going to happen. You have trials and tribulations. You have hardships. That's just the fact of, being on this beautiful, beautiful planet of ours. We have two choices. You can actually cave to them and be a victim of those circumstances, or you can use those obstacles and channel them towards the light, channel them towards the good, channel them towards being a better version of you. And while that helps you, the bigger call to action for me, at least, is it helps the impact the world, your family, your friends, and the community that you serve. So that would be a bow on that for me, my friend. And hopefully that made sense.
No, I love it. Well spoken, well said. Bryce, how do people get a hold of you? Do they find you on Instagram? Do they find you on LinkedIn? Could you give us some contact info or direct us to where people might be able to find more information either about you or your company or what you're up to and what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way, all my social handles, and also to my website is Real Bryce Henson, not to be confused with fake Bryce Henson. So Real Bryce Henson on my social, and then that's my website. And if you're interested in getting healthy and fit, when you go to my website, Real Bryce Henson, just click on the coaching tab, and you can click fitness coaching, and then you can find a Fit Body Bootcamp location near you. Or if potentially you're looking to become a business owner, impact your local community, and be potentially be a franchisee, go to that same tab and click on business coaching, and there's an opportunity. But either way, would love to connect with you to continue to serve.
Hey, very good. Bryce, thank you so much. And thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. We're dropping these every Thursday, so tune in. Every single week, we've got more incredible guests just like Bryce. Create a great day until the next time.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.